What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Hush South Slopes office, which is the detached garage here at my house. The build is almost done. Probably do like a full tour when this whole garage is done and decorated, but for now we are doing a shed tour recap 2020. Many of you guys, or hopefully all you guys, followed along the shed tour. The shed tour is kind of a series that we do every spring, documenting all our shed hunts. So this year we did 38 total episodes, which included everything that Martin and I did, and then Casey and Logan went out a little out in Nevada. But Martin and I got together and pulled out the cream of the crop, the best of the best from our 2020 shed season. We wanted to give you guys a little bit of a story maybe behind each one. We're gonna measure some of these and just give you an idea of how big they are versus some of the other ones. So everything here is from this season except for a set of the big five, I call them. I just brought out both years because I found them 2 consecutive years in a row. So let's snag some of these and show you the good stuff, starting with the stuff we found in South Dakota. We went out there with our buddies Bridger, Mason, and Jacob, and those guys were nice enough to host us out there, get us on some private land to look for whitetail sheds, and we had a blast. So this was the first set of whitetail sheds I found out there. We were driving the quads through the ag fields, and I was on the fence line, which those guys were dead on when they're like, dude, we really need to work the fence line. This was a side-by-side set. Turned out to be what would have been it would have been a 9-point had that been a full inch, but basically an 8-point frame. Very typical buck for out there, a nice up-and-comer, and both sides were laying side by side. So that was pretty exciting for me, because at that point Martin had basically been face crushing me for 2 days straight, so it felt good to get a matching set. Then the other set that I brought out here is a set that Martin and I split, and this was in the same ag field actually as that one, and this is a 9-point frame. I'm not really good with scoring whitetail, so I'm not even going to bother throwing out numbers. I'd just rather show you guys. I was cruising the fence line and found this side on the quad, and Martin was actually walking the fence line in an area that we couldn't drive the quad, and he found the match. So this buck, he popped off both sheds, most likely either jumping the fence or ducking through it. But pretty cool set. For me personally, just a dream whitetail buck. I'd love to harvest something like that, especially with my bow. So hopefully we can get a chance at a whitetail like that this fall. Well, it's not much, but this is the best mule deer shed I found this year. We went, I think, twice specifically for mule deer down in southern Utah, and after many miles of finding nothing, I stumbled on this guy, which I would say, based off the distance between his burr and the split of his G2, he would have been a fairly wide buck. Broke his eye guard, pretty average length on forks. You know, a good buck for the area, but that area really does produce some giants. So that is the best mule deer shed of 2020. All right, guys, this is the first time in a video here on the Hush channel that I've shown the finished product of the big sheep I found, the deadhead. So if you remember seeing the video, this thing was in pretty bad shape, and my buddy Casey with Whiteout Skulls cleaned it up for me and kind of shined up the horns. And I'll tell you what, he did a killer job. This is one of my favorite finds of the year, one of my favorite finds during my lifetime. It was completely unexpected. I would say I never really had a desire to find a sheep skull, because I never really just been around them or spent much time in their habitat and where they live. So super cool, because it was unexpected. Very lucky I was able to legally keep it and get it checked in with Fish and Game, but that's one of my favorite from 2020 for sure. Super heavy old ram. He doesn't have the longest horns because they're so broomed off, but everybody, including myself, is just like surprised by the mega mass of that thing. So I actually brought a tape measure out here just to kind of show you guys some of the lengths of the antlers, and I want to show you how freaking heavy it is right there on his first circumference measurement. But before I do that, I'm going to show you my favorite angle of him. It's from the back. Just chunky, huh? Alright, so we're no experts on measuring sheep, but we saw that they will divide the length of the horn and then take their mass measurements The first one is the base. So let's see if we can get an unofficial mass measurement around the base. So that's crazy. I think it's shrunk since we dried him and boiled him out. It was almost 16, remember?
Mm-hmm.
So he's 15 and a quarter right there. I honestly just love him as like a desk piece. And it's fun to allow people to pick him up because this thing is surprisingly heavy. Sheep guys, you probably know, but if you haven't picked one of these up, this thing right here as is, which is cleaned, and a lot of his horn like on the skull is cut like underneath, it's still 22 pounds. So you pick this up, it's pretty freaking heavy. But definitely one of my favorite finds of all time.
Okay, moving on to elk, I guess now I'll hop in and show you some of mine. So this is the Mega G1 bull. I think it was our first elk shed tour trip that we did. This was the first shed I found. I believe it was a 21-inch G1. We'll have to measure that one real quick. But a super heavy bull. I think he's double digits on his weight, 12-pounder. 340s class elk. Just the single, could not match it up, but that was a cool day. That was when John found that triple unders bull, triple fronts. We got snowed out, but that was a fun day, fun trip. And then this one here, this was a cool story on this guy. First thing I noticed, so I found this left side, Eric found the right side, but first thing I noticed on this bull was his bladed G3s on each side. It would have been a point actually, but he chipped off both of them. So he had split G3s. First thing I noticed too was on the side I found was that 90-degree G2.
Yeah, that
just goes straight up, and he's super dark chocolate. Even out there in this area, like a lot of the bulls get dark, but this one stood out as even more dark. So quickly, the story, I found this evening one in that area, just walking onto it, and then the next day we went back and Eric was doing like a grid pattern like crazy on OnX maps, and finally after maybe an hour or two of doing that, he walked onto the big 6-point side.
All right, straight to the good stuff. On probably my favorite trip of the year. So this was like a backpack style shed hunt with the Can-Am and the tracks. And me, Martin, and Willie bombed into some country that we were familiar with. And we started hitting ridges, and the first day we were kind of in some sign. I think all of us picked up something. And then that evening I was just like, man, I just need to get high in glass. And I got somehow glassed the G1 and 2 on this bull, which was basically from right here forward. And then in that same glassing session, I glassed up a nice like 340 6x6. So there was 3 browns within like 150 yards of each other. Bombed over there, about halfway over there, I could start to see the antler, and I was like, Martin, you might want to get over here, man. Like, I'm finding sheds, and this is going to be a bomber of a pickup. And sure enough, when I got over there, I was not disappointed. Now, I have got myself wound up when I glass sheds. It's easy to be like, dude, it looks big. This one was like one of those no-brainers where you glass it up and you're like, that's a bomber. Never was able to match this guy up, but scored it when I got home. And if it was doubled with a 40, which I think he's even over 40, he just really lays out flat. This bull is going to be about mid 370s. He's got a few inches busted off on the 4th, but besides that, this antler is pretty complete. So Willie, Martin, and myself hit it pretty hard for the other side, never could turn it up, and then I decided to go in on a solo trip and look for it myself. And again, using OnX map, just back and forth, never found the browns. But on my last evening, with like the last couple hours of light, if you guys remember the video where I was pretty bummed I hadn't really found anything and decided just to go hit this random draw, I found his whites from the year before. And as soon as I found this, if you guys remember, I was like, that could be the bull I'm actually after. And one dead giveaway was those like these bubbly areas right on the base. I remember he kind of had that. So I found the right side. It was, you know, clearly almost identical. And I was like, man, I can't find his browns, but I got lucky, and on the next pass, I found this side, which is one of my best sheds, easy, of this season. That back end is so impressive with the royal, the length of the fifth, and then that swoop and main beam. Definitely one of my best single sides. And this set also is right in the mid 370s, with his left side being the stronger side. So Mega G1, Ultra Weak G2, but overall mid 370s bull, and you know, not the biggest burst. So I think this bull has some real potential to hit that 380, 390 over the next year or two, depending on moisture down there. But one of my favorite sets, definitely going in the keeper stack, the Big 5. One of my personal favorites. If you guys remember shed tour last year, I was antler hunting with my brother Walker. We had bombed into an area in hopes to find some browns, and sure enough, we found 2 sets of brown sets, and then I stumbled on this bull, white, which was crazy because I didn't hit that area the year before because it didn't snow, and I just kind of assumed that the bulls wouldn't go down to that elevation because there was hardly any moisture. But when we got there, I was surprised to glass this set up. So this is his last year's set. I mean, there's 5 points, and then there's like big 5 points. And this guy, between the mass and his unders, he's huge. He doesn't have the longest beams, but overall weight and density and mass, I mean, this bull truly is, in my opinion, like a giant 5. Never turned up what would have been his browns. So I went into the area this year, and I was like, that bull has to be here somewhere. And for whatever reason, well, it's not even whatever reason, complete strategy, looking at OnX maps, saying, okay, I've been on this line, I need to walk different lines in hopes to maybe find whites and browns, obviously. So I crossed my line and just went right around this little ravine. And before, I had walked on top of it and looked that way. Well, I didn't know it, but that brown set was right below me on the ridge. And once I finally had made my way around to look back, with my eyeballs, could see a set of sheds. With the binoculars, I was like, that is the Big 5. So these were on the ground the day that my brother and I were out there, and I missed them by 192 feet. He actually lost some of his mass. He gained some length on the G1, and man, he's busted to heck. Like, they're not as heavy, and the mass measurements, you know, above the third, like I can get my finger around that, but I couldn't on that set. So call it old age, it could be a drought year. For whatever reason, he just didn't come back bigger. And that's something I think that maybe new shed hunters may not understand. Like, they're not always bigger each year. They can kind of come up, come down, and then even go back up. They can, some deer or elk will always go up, and some don't. So it's just a variety of things like moisture, feed, age, genetics, etc. But that set right there, so far, just because it is complete, is my favorite set I have off Big 5.
All right, back to me. This set is pretty cool because I glassed them up, which was one of the first sets that I probably glassed up this year. He's kind of got that bubble going on too, just like Eric's bull that he just showed you. Must be a gene down in there in that area, but a cool set. I glassed up the one shining in a tree, and I thought it was probably a chalk that someone left. Went down to look for it, couldn't find the one I glassed up. Walked onto, this was the one I glassed up, walked onto this shed while I was looking for the one I glassed up, and then it ended up being its match. So that was kind of cool. Probably wouldn't have found the match if I went straight to the one I'd glassed. But he's about a 360 class bull if he wasn't broken. He's not very heavy. He has a lot of mass, but just kind of a hollow style shed. But a sweet looking bull, and the cool story with it is this bull is actually dead. One of the guide services down there reached out and said, hey, we had a client shoot that bull a couple years back, and they have a brown set of sheds off him, and of course the head off of that bull. So we might link up with them sometime and get these antlers to those guys since they have some history with him. But a cool set, way nice bull. One of my bigger sets from this year. Okay. On to this guy. He's probably, besides my local bulls that I picked up, my favorite set that I picked up this year is a brown. Just a pretty bull. I mean,
the thirds are unreal, dude.
yeah, the thirds just have that dream shape to them, kind of bowed out, almost a little bit like elbows deep.
True.
How those thirds lay out.
Yep.
But I think this bull has it in him to be mega beast. He's already got a little 7 growing there. He's not super mass heavy, but great tine length, good symmetry. Walked onto this side, gridding a hillside, just like Eric was doing, where you go 10 yards down, do a line, 10 yards down, do a line. On my last line, found this one, walked 100 yards on the OnX maps, found the other side laying there, baking in the sun. So excited to look for this bull next year.
Yeah.
I think he could be a really good one. This is like a 355 set.
That's one thing we're gonna do after this real quick, is just kind of take some measurements on these birds to show you guys what's kind of big and what's average.
I would say this is a smaller bird.
Yeah, for the size.
For the size. I don't know if that means he's young or if they just don't have him, but 355 set, kind of a small burst, but cool wavy shape to those beams too.
Yeah,
I don't know if
way
you can see that
cool.
right there. But that's one of my favorite sets.
Look at those weird shaped burrs on this set. Kind of like oval, which is I'd say more uncommon. They're usually typically pretty round, especially for a bull of this caliber. So this is a 6x7 set I found. Totally lucked into this set. I was actually trying to avoid this little flat bench because in my opinion it just looked what we call heavenly, like too good to be true. And on top of that, I was like, somebody would by now have already walked that little flat spot, just like super sandy down in the desert. So luckily for me, I kind of had to backtrack myself to kind of get around this deep canyon, and boom, there they were, side by side. This kind of one of those, I saw the right side real quick, and then it took me a minute for my eyes to be like, what's that? It's either the other side or it's like a mega long shed, and sure enough, it turned out to be the set. So I can tell you guys from holding everything I have, these things are dang heavy because I'm already feeling it in my shoulders, and they are 13 pounds a piece, a 26-pound set, which for anybody who doesn't know, like, that's pretty dang good. You start getting 12 plus, that's some heavy dense antlers. But this bull really has a good wide frame, a good main frame, and great beams. Just a little short on, you know, pretty much everything. He's not great on everything, but he's not super weak on anything. So gorgeous set, 58 and 57 inch beams. I'm burning on my shoulders. Just a bomber bull. Hope he makes it, you know, another year, and it'd be fun to try to find his sheds again. But now we're just gonna go through and show you some of the burrs and some of the points, just to give you guys an idea, like what really makes a giant bull, and how maybe a 350 compares to like a 370. We're gonna do that with that neck shed, which is behind Martin. I found this monster chalk, and we call them chalk because after being weathered for a few years, they start to kind of crack and chalk. So you can see the deep cuts in this. This is probably three years old. But this bull does not have a giant frame, but from about the third down, it is on the mega heavy side, like mass comparison, mass around the G1, and a big burr. So let's do a quick measurement of that. So I would consider this burr like mega giant, bigger than average, even on big bulls, and I'll show you why. So around the burr it's over 12 and a half. I mean, that's big. So not a high scoring bull. What'd you say, Martin? Like 330, 340 tops?
Yeah, 330.
330 bull with a 12.5-inch base. Then we got a 365, big, heavy, dense brown with, you know, giant beams. And his burr circumference, which this circumference measurement is never added into any scoring system that I'm aware of. It's more for reference. Dude, that surprises me.
What'd it get?
Holy cow. 12 1/4 or more?
Wow.
I didn't think so, just because it was so awkwardly shaped. So that's still like a giant burr. Just
dang.
So if you were to round that up, it'd look big, but to me, it doesn't look big at all. Wow, that was surprising. That's why this kind of stuff is fun. All right, next one, Big 5, his most recent shed, which would say this is his oldest age. And I consider this to be a big bull. When they're concave like that, I think that happens when they're older. So this burr, 11.5 on the Big 5. All right, probably the highest scoring shed right here as a single. Probably a mid 370s single. Pretty good mass throughout, but the burr, in my opinion, pretty small for a bull of this caliber. Only 11. And then the next one we have is Martin's 355. And this one, total circumference, only 10.25. Then you got this. Now this bull, 360s set, and his mass will really add up. You know, you get measurement here, here, and here, and then of course between the 1 and 2, and that would really help this bull. And when they're so heavy, sometimes it will make their points look shorter, but it's just a optical illusion kind of. Let's see what he's got. So that one, pretty dang good. 11.75. That's a big, heavy bull. So for comparison, you know, they're all within a couple inches, but an inch on a burr is like a big deal. This bull right here has got one of the biggest burrs that I have in anything in my collection, and that's including all my sheds. So elbows deep burr, if I remember, was pushing 13.
Right on the money.
Dang close to 13. That's a giant burr. I would say average mass, you know, you'd find that horn and be like, oh, he's kind of willowy to average. You would see this and be like, dude, it's mega heavy. Like, to me, that's bigger than average. This one's probably just slightly bigger than average. This one, up until this point, is pretty heavy. This one actually is the heaviest in weight, but not in mass measurements. So sometimes, like Martin said, they'll kind of feel like honeycomb and light, and sometimes they're super dense. But that kind of gives you an idea of mass measurements and the size of, you know, big burrs versus just average size. All right, guys, that's a little, I guess it's kind of like an end cap of the 2020 shed tour. It's not that it has to end, or it's not even that there is a true season on elk sheds. I guess, unless you're in some states, there is a season. But for us, it's not that it's the end of the season. It's just our time is valuable, and basically our brains kind of shift into scouting season and really getting excited about the hunt. So props to anybody who is still out there hitting it hard. I know it's not easy when it's hot like this. Sometimes the grass will grow, the oak leaves will take over. So if anybody's out there still hitting it, good luck to you. And I just want to say thanks to everyone who watched the shed tour. We really hope you enjoyed the videos. From what we saw in comments and read, and the interactions we had with all the viewers, it seemed to get really good feedback, and people really like the shed hunt. So if you enjoyed the series, please put a comment on this video and let us know what you thought of the entire series. If you liked it, if you didn't, what you think we can do better, or even what you'd like to see more of. But it was definitely a good season for us. I think me and Martin both had a killer year. I could easily say that this is my best shed hunting season yet, between the quantity, the quality, and the unexpected sheephead. So thanks again, everybody, and as usual, please subscribe to the channel, check out our merchandise, and support all our partners. Links to the store and discount codes for you guys are in the description box below on our YouTube channel. And just want to say thanks again for all the support across the website, across our social platforms. We really wouldn't be able to get out and go and create content as much as we do without you guys. So thanks again. Catch you guys on the next video.